Hello, Hamish here from mortgagesonline.co.nz. I've got Miriam Bell with me today, senior business journalist from stuff.co.nz.
Hi, Hamish.
And we're talking about Australia. Is it time to leave?
Well, a lot of people think so, but I mean, one of the things that sort of fits into my area quite a lot is, you often hear the house prices are much cheaper in Australia than they are here. So I decided to have a look at that and find out.
And
it's
beautiful article.
Not quite as simple as it might seem.
Really?
That is true, because Australia's market is obviously made up of 8 different state markets, which are quite different. So while its national median, once converted to New Zealand dollars, is I think 825,000, around that, which is lower than New Zealand's median, which is 840,000.
Yep.
Once you start looking at the different states, it becomes quite a different sort of equation. Obviously, some of those, there's still a variety of prices. So, for example, some areas would be much cheaper than others, particularly once you're out of the cities. But if you were moving to Sydney, which I think is where a lot of people might move to, you'd be looking at a median of 1.22 million. And because there's so many townhouses and apartments in their housing stock, they actually divide up the data so that the median house price in Sydney, for example, is 1.54 million, which is considerably higher than you might think.
Okay, so yes, that's another thing to consider. So the type of housing, and obviously and where you are as well. Because the other thing I hear is that the drive times are massive as well, right?
Well, they are. Like the case study I spoke to for this article has lived in Sydney for many years. He's from Coromandel originally, and he rents in a place that he loves. But he says he looked at buying a house, and he would have, to get a house that was, he said, of poor to average quality, which would cost about $1 million, he reckoned, he'd have an hour's drive to work.
Wow. Okay.
So there are those things to take into account too. And there is another issue with Australia, which I think people often overlook, which is that they have stamp duty, which you have to pay on top of the asking price.
Right, but you can get a mortgage for that, right?
No, you can't. The stamp duty can't come out of mortgage lending. It has to be on top of what you save for a deposit, basically.
Oh my gosh, and in your article here, you mentioned some of these stamp duties are not peanuts either, right?
No, they're not. In Sydney, for example, it can be between $50,000 and $100,000. It's a percentage of the asking price of the property. Right. I do understand that some states are looking at and are starting to introduce some sort of exemptions for qualifying first home buyers around stamp duty, because it's considered, they're considered to have problems with first home buyers getting into the market too, like we do. Mm-hmm. But not all of them. And not all of those changes have happened yet. So at the moment, you pay stamp duty on top of what you pay for the house.
Right, so it looks like I might be moving just yet. I'll stick around
you
for a
could
bit longer.
move to Perth or to some of those regional areas, and they're much cheaper.
Yeah, but then I have to live next to Australians.
And,
that's
there's some
thing.
fairly
That's
extreme weather. There's all sorts of issues to take into consideration.
But cool, hey, thank you for that. That's been really insightful. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.